What's going on, guys? Got update on the LT230. This is going to be a put the engine back together. Can't really do anything else to the bike till I get the engine in it. So this will be a several take video of assembling this engine. This is a cg200 Honda clone engine, and it's not a how-to video. You can take things as you want. I'm sure it can be helpful to somebody putting one of these together. I've had several of these engines apart and put back together. Some of my things that I do, people may disagree with, but I guess overall, you know, it might be helpful. I decided to use my cousin's old bottom end. This one here already has the clutch off. I plan on putting a brand new clutch in it. And there's also some things like there's a lot less damage on here. The eBay engine had tons of damage going around here. It wasn't enough to like leak or anything. It's just trashed over here from not running a chain guard. And I solvent cleaned this whole bottom end. Sorry about the noise from that inverter, but I need some light in here. Solvent cleaned the whole thing. One of the things I had to do, I don't know if you can see down in here, but it had flat screws, and I destroyed them getting them out. I had this oil pump off a while back for some reason. I think we was looking at trying to use this on something else or something. But anyway, the screws got destroyed, so what I did was I put bolts in there instead and then ground the top of the heads off so that the gear would clear. I just stuck this thing down a solid tank, ran it through, even kind of like turned it over a little bit while I was running it through. So right now she is dry. It is dry. So what I'm going to do is, after I put this whole thing together, I'll put a quart of oil in it, tip it on its side, you know, tip it on the other side, and I'll probably flip it upside down for a second. You know, try to get oil all the way through it. This head is also from my cousin's engine because, oh no, this came off the eBay engine. Sorry, this came off the eBay engine because my uncle pointed out that the valves wasn't seating down in as far. He thought maybe there might be an issue with the other head. I think actually that it just isn't seated in as good. I kind of went through that with the last video, but because this one here, you dump solvent down in here, it just runs right out of the intake valve, so it's not seated. I got a spring compressor. My wife might be bringing it out later today. We can take these off, and I don't even know if I have valve seals that'll fit in here, but we'll find out. Surfacing stuff. I didn't surface this edge. It has a bead seal, but you don't want to have a blowed head gasket right off the bat, you know. So one thing you want to do is you want to surface these edges in the same way with the cylinder. Very important. What I do is I take 150 grit paper, sandpaper, and you want to tape it down to a perfectly flat surface. I used a granite block, but you just gotta find a perfectly flat surface. That's all I can tell you. Tape down the paper to the surface as, you know, good as you can. You don't want to walk in and buckling up. And you set your head down on there, and you let's see. I'll try to find something. You kind of want to turn it as you're moving it back and forth. You want to turn it because you don't want to, just in case there is a bump in the surface below it, you don't want it just wearing through and creating a low spot. But you know, you just keep going back and forth, pushing down, you know, enough that it keeps it flat, and you'll. That's pretty much how they do it at like Napa. They got a big belt thing that they set the whole head on. and you know, that's how they do it, but it's pretty much the same principle. And you'll see that whenever you're going across this stuff, the low spots, because it won't be touching. And you don't want to do it forever, but at the same time you don't want it. You want to get rid of them low spots. You're only going to be taking off a few thousand, so it's not a big deal. Unless if you got something that's really bad, you should just replace it. You can also use the same thing for cleaning up surfaces around your covers. And you'll also discover too if somebody else owned it before you and went around it with like a powered tool, you know, going around here and trying to clean off the edges with a, like say, a wire wheel. You'll discover that there are low spots from doing that. You do not want to use a powered wire wheel to clean off old gasket material off something like this, because you're going to make dips and bad spots, and then your head gasket's going to blow. The parts I plan on putting in here brand new. We got brand new piston. I was unsure about what ring goes where. I put the shiny one on the top, the one that's all gray at the bottom. And also when you put this together, you want to stagger your gaps in your rings. Like put one on one side, one on the other. Even with the oil rings, kind of stagger them off. I got a heck of a deal on this. It was like $13 with the rings and all. The cylinder is the best of the two. It had the least amount of wear. And I currently have a crosshatch pattern in it. I did not stick a hone in it because this cylinder had obviously not been used very much, and I really didn't want to stick a hone down in it, so I just used 100 grit sandpaper and put a crosshatch in it, so that way it can help break into new rings. There shouldn't be any low or high spots in this cylinder because of the low hours it has. Let's see. I gotta put new valve seals in this, and try to lap those valves. Got a brand new clutch, brand new stator, brand new starter clutch, brand new upper rocker assembly, brand new sending unit, which I also kind of discovered. A little brass thingy I'm missing for I was going to put in the other engine if I was to put it together is in this bag. So that's cool. Brand new head gasket, and I have brand new gaskets for the side cases. Installing the clutch. One thing I like to mention before installing the clutch: always make sure that this guy here is seated in where it is. I mean, as you can see, it just pulls out. It's a shifting shaft. But always make sure that that guy is down in where it's supposed to be, because say you get the clutch on there and it's out, then you have to take the clutch back off to get it back in there, and then even then it can still come out just a little bit. And then when you're putting your side case cover on, you want to make sure that that thing's still seated down in where it goes. The only thing that holds it in is the outer cover at this point. And you'll end up busting your cover if it's not all the way in, or it'll just be jammed up. Installing the clutch. It goes on like that, and then there's this little washer right here. It goes on and then it turns just a little bit. I don't know what this thing actually does, because as you can see, I mean, I'm sure it turns in there and gets to points where it's not even really doing anything, but for the sake of things, there it is. Got crankshaft gear, and my oil pump needs to be there. It's on there. And then we get the clutch in, which gears probably ain't lined up for that either, but you know, Gotta line the gears up, get it in there. And then this guy here goes on here once you get the clutch packs on, which is kind of rough to get it in there. With this on, you can take this off and put it back on. Alright, so we got the clutch installed, making sure my gear shifter thingy's where it belongs. Next is the harmonics dampener. Pretty much goes on just like that. You have a washer that says this side out, and you can see that there's a chamfer on here, so that side's going to be out. And I got a special tool that I made homemade. If you don't have one, you're going to have to buy one or make one. And I'll tighten it down and probably use my impact to tighten it up. Don't have much trouble with that. The screws that hold it on, I'll put them in as tight as I can by hand, and I'll probably mark them with my Sharpie, and I'll actually use my impact to snug them down a little bit more, and the mark will change, you know, and give me an idea how much tighter I put it. I do not have a driver impact, so got to use what I got. And also I'll install the throwout bearing, and this one here uses the little pin and stuff. I've seen like 3 different designs in these engines, and one thing I like to note is when you buy one of these clutches, who knows what your combination of stuff you're going to need. You may end up reusing your basket and your throwout bearing, because you can see here there's different types. So the clutch pack you buy might actually just be a rebuild kit for the one that you own. Alright, so you can see I used my impact. I got about a 1/4 turn on each one of these, more than what, you know, I could get with my just a screwdriver. So this side cover is ready to go on, and we'll work on something else. Kind of was thinking about something that I like to mention. Putting these bolts in the side of your case, I just had them in a bag. There's different lengths, and pretty much what I do is just shove them all in the hole. Well, I just dropped one. Just shove them all in the hole, just free. And you'll kind of see that, you know, all of them kind of stick out about the same. You know, so that gives you an idea of if you got it in the right hole or not. But yeah. Alright, working on putting piston in top of the cylinder, or the jug on. And pretty much I greased the, not greased, but used motor oil, the ring here. Put one keeper in, oiled everything up, slid it in, and then I'll stuff a rag. You want to stuff a rag down in here, so that way when you're putting this pin in, you don't accidentally drop it down in the engine. That would like suck. And then I put this gasket on before I put the piston on. And like I think I mentioned already, stagger your rings. I'm going to stagger them. And usually they're marked. Like the top ring will have a little dot on it, which would be pointed up, and would be your top ring. Which this one here didn't have anything to identify anything, and there's no book for this thing. So I have no torque specs, I don't have any idea. The piston here says in on it. This side would be in. And we'll oil up the cylinder a little bit. And as you can see, there's a chamfer on here to help you get the rings in it. And also you want to make sure if you have any O-rings or anything that goes in between, you want to make sure you get those in. This don't have any between here, but it does the head. And also, oh, if you have a gasket goes on here, or O-ring it goes on here, that means you have a removable sleeve. This one here is not removable, so it doesn't have an O-ring here. Alright, we got the cylinder on there and got a little O-ring in there. Gas is ready to go. My valve spring compressor showed up, and I ordered the bigger of the 2 they selling, figuring that if it's too big I just put a socket on here. See how this guy works. Alright, we got the valve spring compressor on there with a socket. And I kind of had to learn how to use this thing, but it kind of compressed it more than what I really needed. But you see here, now I can get those keepers out. They just fell out. Alright, so we got the valves out of there, and here's one of the valve seals for this engine. And then I went and got into my 300EX stuff, and you see they are exactly the same valve seals. So awesome. I know what I can get for these. I'll have to replenish the 300EX with new ones, but I can just look up these and I know what I need. Alright, earlier I was mentioning how one of these wasn't seating because the solvent was running through it. This wee little piece of metal right here was jammed in between the seat and the valve, so that's why it wasn't seating. And before I put my valve seals in, I'm going to lap these valves, and I'm going to use a drill. I'm just going to stick the valve down in there, chuck my drill up to the other side, you know, like hand tighten chuck, and spin these. And I should be able to see if there's an area that it's not touching by spinning it. So we'll see how that goes, and then I'll clean this out of here too before I seat the valve. I'll clean this carbon out of here. Alright, I cleaned the back side of the valves, you know, all the carbon off of them with that, and I cleaned the carbon out of the head actually with a wire brush. I didn't want to use any powered things to, you know, run up and ruin my surface here. And you can see here spins, and I'll just pull back on there, let it run against this for a little bit, and then I'll take it off and see if I see anything missing. Alright, so you can see here I got a nice little shiny ring all the way around that seat. So should be in pretty good shape. I'll do that to the other side. You can see it's not shiny there, so that's before and after. So we'll see if the other side does the same. We can put it back together. And then when I go to put the valves in, I'll lube up this shaft a little bit and lube up these seals a little bit, so that way they don't burn up, you know, the first couple revolutions it makes. Alright, so we got the head back together, and this tool is really a handy device, but I couldn't get enough leverage on here, you know, with the handle it has. I ended up using like my exhaust right here to like get some leverage on it. So I mean, that's the only thing I'd say about this thing. They should have made this handle a little longer. Of course, I don't know. That might get in the way of this, or make it come up and, you know, come out, you know, so you can get some more leverage. But it did the job, and it's big enough I can do bigger heads. I just had to use a socket on this. Alright, we got the head bolted on. All the head bolts are on there. I have no idea what to torque them to. I just put them tight. I don't know. And then we put the push rods in and put the rocker assembly on. Alright, we got the head bolted up and the rocker assembly on, push rods in. You gotta be careful when sticking these push rods down in that they seat onto the lower rockers. And adjusting these valves, I usually just tighten these down to where it's just, you know, free moving, and then when I tighten this down, it'll kind of pick back up on it a little bit, and pretty much just get them to where they got some sort of amount of play to them. It's kind of one of them things where, you know, there is specs somewhere, usually a couple thousandths, you know, between this space and that space, you know, the two edges here. But it's more by ear, by performance, you know. You don't want the valve still open, but you want it to close, but you don't want to be slapping around. So it's kind of just, it's kind of one of them trial and error things with valves. You know, you just, sometimes you put them to spec and it's just not right. And then even like I said, when you tighten this down, it pulls it up some, So even though you put your feeler gauge in there and you tighten this down, well, then it ain't right again. So, you know, can't really give you too much advice on that. I just go by what it needs to be. Guess we'll put this valve cover on here and start working on the flywheel and starter clutch. Alright, now we'll put the flywheel on there. I just bolted on the brand new starter clutch. It's 3 Allens down in there. And let's see what else I gotta say. Oh, while you're putting this on and tightening it down, you gotta make sure that the starter clutch can turn one way as you're tightening it down. Sometimes they jam up. Alright, so we got the flywheel on. Now we're going to stick this gear on here, and you can see here one of the shafts has a little sprag sticking out of it. That's going to go on the outer gear. You can see where it goes in there, so that gives you an idea where they go. And then each one of these gears has one of these little flat washers on each side. Alright, so we got the stator. I put the stator in there, didn't film anything about that. Bolted the stator in. I put the starter gears and all that in, and the gear shifter sending unit tells you what gear you're in, and tucked all the wires up in here. We get a starter and a sprocket on here. I put in a little nick in my paint. Alright, so engine is completed. Got starter, sprocket on, and this cover here goes on there. Ready to go in the bike. Thanks for watching.